Okay. Okay. So we are live. Welcome everybody from whichever country in the world you're living now. Or we are very happy to have here this evening in the third conference, Italian conference of the three principles, two of the two our favorites teacher and people teaching the three principles. So they are very special persons. They are very special teacher, and so I'm going to let them talk. So I'm going to shut up, and they are going to speak and take question. They are going to tell you when they will open up the stage for question. So here they are, Chip and then Chipman. Thank you very much to be here with us this evening, and we are going to listen to you.
Well, thank you so much, Alessandro and Chiara. It's so beautiful to be here with everybody.
And thank you for doing this, and your whole team for doing this. This work is so beautiful, and it's helping so many people. And I know that your team and you guys have really put out in the last few years, really made the best effort to support Sid's vision and to help other people have that possibility of seeing what they have within them. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So I'm going to hide now. So the stage is all yours.
And
Okay.
Alessandro, if
Yes.
we want to see everybody on the screen, can
Oh,
we...
it's not possible to see everyone in the screen with this platform.
Darn.
So if you want, I can leave my face, but if you prefer, I hide myself as you prefer.
Whatever you prefer is fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I hide myself so they can see you full screen. But I'm
Well, hello, everybody. Thank you very much for having us. I'm not sure where to start today, but I do want to talk about simplicity in terms of what principles of life.
Because that's what I feel is the biggest gift that we're still discovering now after all these years, 46 years, I think, since we first met Sid. But that's what is becoming more and more clear to us that he really talked about in the beginning. And we just didn't know how to find that simplicity and in the beginning. But as we keep listening through the years, it just has become part of our life.
It's so simple, this understanding of these three principles. It's so simple that sometimes we think we're looking for a complicated answer. We want to resolve this problem, that issue, the world. And yet, the way I see it, looking back through these 40 years or so, we're still learning from the very first, very simple insights we had listening to Sid. And I know many people may have heard the story, but I will relate one brief story about an insight. And I want to share how that insight is still speaking to me all of these years later. When this began for us, Jan met Sid Banks quite by accident, 40 some years ago now. At the time, we weren't doing really well as a couple. We may not have even survived as a couple. But after Jan met Sid, she changed tremendously, and to put in a very short way, stopped participating with me in some of our arguments and upsets. She just didn't go there anymore. Right? And that was very difficult for me in the beginning. I didn't know what was happening. It's just that something had changed and wasn't the same. And I believe me, I tried to get Jan back where I knew her to argue and be upset, but in the long run, it didn't work. And it was that sustained change in Jan, the fact that she kept growing and changing and feeling better. And she's obviously, to me, it became obvious that she was living a better life than I was. And this is just within a 2 or 3 weeks. And so I finally, that change in her, I began to see that it was real and it wasn't going to go away. And that finally brought up curiosity in me. And curiosity is a very, very healthy um, experience. When we're locked in and we're tied to our old beliefs and we're tied to where we think we are, we seldom have much real curiosity. So anyway, curiosity came up and I started to listen to Jan and to Sid for the first time and go to a couple of his trainings. And I still didn't understand what was going on. It was like the strangest thing now when I look back on that period is that our marriage changed completely after Jan met Sid. Within 3 or 4 weeks, it was completely changed and better. And I don't remember trying to change this or not do that or stop this. It just changed. And to this day, I don't really understand intellectually what happened. It just changed. Right? That's how simple it was. So after listening for a while, I started to feel better. Our relationship had improved tremendously. And I had this little wee simple experience. I was sitting on a couch one morning. I think I was reading and drinking coffee, early morning. And Jan was on the floor with our son Peter playing. And the light from the window was coming in at a very steep angle and shining in their hair, and it caught my attention. And I looked over at them, and this feeling just rushed in, just feelings, just amazing deep feelings. I was emotional, and I honestly didn't understand what was happening to me. I just had this really powerful and beautiful feeling, and it was foreign to me. I wasn't used to having that nice feeling, right? And it just absolutely filled me. And as I was looking at them and that feeling became so strong, I remember thinking, all I have to do is surrender. There's nothing to figure out, just surrender. And I didn't understand intellectually what happened in that moment, but from that moment on, my life changed tremendously. Our life changed tremendously. And it started moving in the direction that we have now, this beautiful life we have. And so, as I said, I didn't understand intellectually what happened in that moment. And it was a long time before I did, actually. As we continued listening to Sid and learning, I began to see that that was my first moment of actually seeing. I saw my wife and child. I saw them. I didn't see all my thinking about them and all the past and all the history and all the, oh my, the poor me. I didn't see any of that. I saw them in that moment, in the now. And I somehow knew, even though I didn't know intellectually, I knew that that was the truer reality. I knew that was a true reality. And because I knew that, even though I didn't understand it, I knew that our life was going to be beautiful. I knew that we were going to be okay. And so fast forward all of these years, and continually, every now and then, that very same insight from all those years ago continues to speak to me. Like I'll be caught up in my head or concerned about something, or even in the morning get up and walk through the living room to get my coffee and not even really notice Jan. And then I'll remember, I'll remember, and I'll be grateful again for being able to see that true reality of what's really present, what the now really has. Right? And so I don't know how much simpler it can get than a split second of seeing from listening and hearing. And that seeing, if you want to put it in another way, is your true self seeing instead of the self we imagine ourselves to be.
And that's what's so beautiful about this understanding. And I don't know how many people are on here today who this is new to them, but are how many people have heard our story before, but again, the simplicity is that's our theme today, but we already have that simplicity. We are that simplicity. And before that fateful day when I got to hear Sid Banks share from what he saw as what life is, I had complicated life. And so I was trying to find answers to fix our marriage, which was really, we were really struggling. And for myself, I felt really insecure around other people, and I would get upset really easily with people. And yet I knew there was something spiritual about life, and I wanted to find the answers. But in my innocence, I was complicating it so much. I was trying to figure out what the answer is. So when I heard Sid that day, just in his living room, I ended up there with some friends who were visiting him, and they were my ride home. So I just ended up there, and at that was near the very beginning of when Sid started sharing his insights with people. And I had noticed people who were listening to Sid. There were a few people in our community who were listening to Sid, and I felt they were just too naive. They seemed so happy all of a sudden, and I that bothered me because I thought, well, it's more complicated. It's not that simple that you could just listen to somebody and then life would, be more positive for you. So when I met Sid that day, I I was so shy, and I was just a stranger to him and his wife and the people that were visiting him in his living room that day, that I didn't want to argue or anything. I just sat and listened. I basically just sat, and Sid was just talking, socializing with some friends, and but then all of a sudden he started talking very talking just about life, and the feeling in the room was very quiet and calm, and people were just listening to what he had to say. And so I just started listening, and I because I was being quiet, I was kind of absorbing what Sid was saying. I stopped trying to judge what he was saying or figure out what he was saying. I just let go and let it just absorb it. I just absorbed it. And I had walked into that room a very frightened, insecure person who was worried about everything, everything, and not a happy person. And but when I heard Sid talk in that moment, I heard him say, and he looked over at me, and because I was the stranger that day in the room, but he said, if everybody in this room could see who they really are, how beautiful they really are, they'd have all the happiness they could ever imagine. And I just let that in. I normally, if someone said, well, you're a beautiful person, I would just say, no, you don't know me. I let it into my heart, and out of nowhere, I just felt this feeling of peace. And I wasn't trying to make it happen. It happened to me. And as I sat there and I got this feeling of peace, as I everything that Sid said about life, I just kept thinking that's true. And then he'd say another thing about how there's an energy behind life, and we're all one, and all these things that it kept reminding me of all the wisdom I'd heard my whole life. And so I just realized there's nothing in that he's saying that isn't true. That's what really struck me. And then as I kept listening, another thought occurred to me that all the wise people have always been saying you have to hear your own truth from within yourself. It has to come within you. Nobody can put it in you. You have to hear it from inside you. And as I had that insight, this is what I heard in my head was, it looks like the wisdom is coming from the man who's speaking, but I wouldn't be able to hear it if I didn't already have it. And so I've had wisdom my whole life, and I'll have it for the rest of my life. And that was such a beautiful thing for me to realize, because Sid really isn't teaching us anything. We're hearing it from inside ourselves. And that to me is the most important thing, because I still listen to Sid or read something of Sid to start my day, so that I'm hearing my true self and realizing that life really is coming from inside. It's not coming from out there.
I mean, that's how simple it really is find somebody that you feel has a deeper understanding about life and is speaking from a beautiful place. Find somebody whose life exemplifies that, but who speaks from that feeling, and listen to them. And it's a strange thing to say, and Sid said it many times. It doesn't really matter what words they are saying. The beauty of listening to Sid for me is that he's speaking from that feeling, right? And quite often I like to share that. I mean, I know how fortunate we were to be around and know Sid and have him as a friend for many years. I know that that's amazingly fortunate. But one of the most amazing things is the fact that his materials, his books, and his recordings are there, and they're his words. You know, there have been great people through history who've had profound insights that affected the world, but mostly we heard what other people thought they said, you know, because they didn't, of course, they didn't have recordings, but they didn't necessarily write either. So we have this opportunity. Everybody has this opportunity if they've never met, and most people on this call have never met Sid Banks. But when you have the opportunity to listen to one of his recordings or read one of his books, he's speaking from that space. You know, he's speaking from that deep, beautiful understanding of life. And there's a magic with that, because if we just listen, whether it's to Sid or whoever you think really has that feeling, that deep understanding, the possibility exists when we listen to that, somebody speaking from that feeling, and for me that's Sid, is that we slip into that feeling when we're listening. And the most amazing way to listen to Sid is to just listen. No analyzing, no thinking, no trying to figure out how you're going to get better or what it's going to do for you or how it compares to anything else. Just listen. Okay? And there's a beautiful thing about deep listening like that. And it's a very simple thing. You really can't listen in that deep, deep way. Just listen and think at the same time. At least not thoughts from the past at the same time. Okay? So we have that beautiful experience then of our minds being quiet. And when that happens, you're not listening to Sydney Banks anymore. You are, but in truth, you're listening to your true self. And that's the beauty of those recordings and books. When Jan was talking about listening in the morning, when I listen like this morning, you just get quiet and you end up listening to your true self, that wisdom that lies within. And that guides you in this life. And this whole thing, the three principles and all that's taught about and everything, that's how simple it actually is. That you have, as Jen said, you have that wisdom within you. It's a matter of listening to it, getting quiet enough, and just being at peace when you listen. And the thing is, we're not trying to rearrange our lives. It's not life, as Jan said, it's not life doing it to us in this experience and that experience. Right? The answers to resolve all of those things we worry about in this life, or the things we'd like to change, lie not in figuring them all out, but in looking at them from a totally different perch, from a totally different perspective. Okay? When we get quiet, when we fall into the now, and the now and our true self is the same thing, The now, the true self, the unknown are all the same thing. Okay? And the unknown is where all the goodies are. That's where we see something new, where we have insights. If they were known to us, none of us would have any problems. But they're not. Okay? And there's no amount of intellectual consideration or ruminating or thinking that will figure out our issues. And yet, when we get truly quiet, when we fall into the now, it just becomes very clear. Right? Like that moment I told you about, looking at Jan and my son. Seeing the true reality guides you in this life. Okay? You may not stay in that feeling, for a long time when it happens, but it doesn't matter. It's there. You have a new understanding of what is real and what isn't real. You have a new understanding of what is true. And beyond all of that, you now have a new understanding of who and what you are. Okay? And so you're looking at this world from a completely new perspective. Right? When that happens, when you have a shift in your level of consciousness, it's not just one thing that changes that you've been concerned about. Everything changes. Everything. Because you're looking at everything from a new place, okay? From a new level of understanding. And that's how our lives get better. That's how they're improved. And it is difficult sometimes for people to accept that simplicity, that there's no thing we have to do, nothing we have to work on, no ritual that's going to help us.
Mm-hmm.
And truthfully, I was listening to Sid this morning, heard him say, nobody else is going to help you.
Well, and it's funny when you said ritual, because before, up until when we met Sid, we were like searching, and so we would search through different types of meditation, and we'd go to a retreat, and we'd do the outward form, of the meditating and the silence, and then we get home, and we'd feel better for a little bit, and then it would get, then we'd be back into all the negativity. And so when we met Sid, like as I said, I heard that I had the wisdom already inside me, and what I heard was happiness is within all of us. It's already in us. Our true self has all the happiness and joy already, and we just accept as much as we want as we go along. And so back then I wasn't accepting any beautiful thoughts about myself. I just thought I was a failure in so many ways, and not as good as anybody else, and all those thoughts were making my world an unhappy place. But I thought it was things out there that were making me unhappy. I thought it was someone else's way they were talking to me, or events that were going on in the world that were making me unhappy. And what happened that day when I heard Sid was, because that happiness welled up in me from nowhere. When I heard those words, I was amazed that I did have that happiness in me. And so our life became happy, instantly. We had a nicer time. And after, once Chip accepted that I wasn't going back into our old habits and arguments, and then it kind of settled into a new life of this more peace of mind. And maybe it would seem at sometimes that we had lost that initial feeling, that we were, where did it go? Because all of us, maybe a few months later, some old feelings of negativity came in, and we think, oh, we've lost it. Now we don't have that understanding. It was too good to be true. But then Sid would say, you're just noticing things that you didn't used to notice because you had a beautiful feeling of happiness. And now if you have a bad day, it looks even worse. And so we would trust what he said, because we saw Sid and his wife, and his first wife, at the time that we met him was like in 1975. They had this peaceful feeling. They had this beautiful family life. And I know they had their ups and downs, but they also had this solid ground of a happy couple. And that's what really was attractive to us. And so now what's happened is over the years, we still have our ups and downs like everybody. And just this week, we each had like a horrible day in our head, right? But somewhere we know that where that's coming from, it's not coming from reality. It's coming up from our little made up reality. And so just knowing that is enough for us to get back to that nice feeling, and to trust that that nice feeling is always there. It's already in us. It's when we open up to it. It's not something we have to find out there or look for. It's something that's already inside.
I love that Jen said that, just to be clear, like it has been well over 40 years that we've been learning from these principles and from Sid Banks, but we still have our days, like it's like you go inside, you see the world from a different place, but then you have to live life. You go back into living life. But you go back into living life, to quote Mr. Banks, knowing that you are the dreamer, right? And so when the dream isn't so nice, it's not so nice, but you still know you're the dreamer, at some level. And you always know that you're going to get back to home. See, that's what's really neat, is like life, it truly is a contact sport. There's no doubt about it. And we have things that happen in our lives. We'll go through tragedies, we'll lose people, all of those things that will make us feel sadness and unhappiness. Every once in a while, when I get really tired, I feel all of those things: jealousy, not liking myself. When I get really tired, that's my weakness. That thinking comes back in. But it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because we know where home is. We know what's real. And that makes those times pass more easily and more quickly, right? And allows us to live in that nice feeling more of the time. And something that I realized a while ago was that the feeling that we have in this life, that is our life. The feeling is our life, right? And how grateful I am that I may fall into a moment or two or a day of thinking and worrying and concern and all of those kinds of things, but I know it's going to end. A few years ago, Jan and I were talking in London, and they gave us the subject of parenthood, which was kind of interesting because our kids had been long gone and out of the house, and we hadn't really been parents in that sense for a long time. But we decided to do it, and we started talking about our son and our daughter and our son-in-law, and kind of how they live life. They have understanding, right? And as we were talking about, a question came up about our daughter and son-in-law and our two grandchildren, and the question was something along the lines, you mean like they're happy all the time? They don't, I said, no, absolutely. They have their ups and downs like everybody else, but this is what my grandchildren see. Okay. They see parents that really love them, who have a bad day now and then, right? Who, who's their dad maybe has a bad day at work, or their mom's been working too hard or whatever. They see those moments. But what they really see on a continual basis, right? They see their parents go through things, but always come back to balance. They see that over and over and over again, right? And so that's their idea, that's their sense of how life works, that we go through things, but we return to balance and happiness. Our grandchildren think life works that way. They know life works that way. And so it's an amazing thing that we won't, no matter what we learn with the principles, we're still human beings and we still have thought, and we'll go through things. The difference is that Once you've had some insights and seen from that deeper level, you know that's home. You know that's real, and that's your guide. That's your lighthouse.
And when you know that for yourself, it changes the way you look at the world, and it's the most beautiful answer to everything in your life. And what just occurred to me when you were talking about being parents, and this applies to not just being parents, but to every interaction you have in your life, is that if you're having a difficult time seeing eye to eye with someone, or you're feeling um, challenged, someone's challenging you or upsetting you, that the number one answer for me every time is just to take care of my own happiness. The more I've noticed over time that if I'm trying to figure out what's going on with someone else and how they're relating to me, I either get confused or upset or angry or judgmental. And so I always go back again to the simplicity of, don't try and figure out other people, what they're thinking. It's just you treasure your own joy in life. And I feel like it's like you fall in love with your own life and you cherish your experience of life. And that was another thing I learned from Sid, and in the early days, was he just he would find joy in the simplicity of life. He would just be joyful being in his garden and looking out at his lawn after he just cut his lawn, or just sitting having a cup of tea and watching telly, on his sofa, and having a good laugh at some humorous show on TV, and or just going out for breakfast and sitting in a restaurant somewhere having breakfast together, and he would just show us that life is meant to be a joyful experience, and that when you trust that you can let go of all your worries about life and slip into that enjoyment of life, then all of a sudden you turn around and those worries are gone and they've been fixed. And I know there's still things that people face that are hard and challenging, but somewhere they get fixed from the inside when you let them, when you trust that all the answers really are inside you, that you're this beautiful, perfect being that is at one with all the other beings in the universe. We really are one. And I know I'm saying those words and it's words, but I feel that more and more the deeper I go into this understanding, is that there isn't a separation. We're all the same inside. And to me, that takes care of so many challenges that come up in life, because you start trusting in life. You're not always on the defense, like what's life gonna do to me today, you're in this feeling that life is taking care of me, that I am part of that oneness, that everything is created from. And so you start to see that you can create a beautiful life. It's not being created for you. You're actually creating it from that true self.
Everyone has that capacity within them, no exceptions. There's no person on this earth wiser than any other person, right? No one on this call is any wiser than anybody else, right? And yet we are so wise. And Sid was the first one to tell you that he wasn't special. He would tell you that. And he refused to take credit for your change. He'd say, oh, thank you, Sid. Our life is so much better. He'd say, no, you did that. It's important to realize that you did that. Right? That you heard something from within you. Otherwise, it's a teacher-student thing. And that's not what we want. Right? We want to grow in understanding together. And he was absolutely certain about that. Right? And seeing him and watching him act in that way through all those years really showed us how we should work with people, how we should listen, how we should serve, right? And the absolute number one thing that guides us in our service is that whoever we're talking to, no matter where, no matter what, no matter who, they have truth and wisdom within them. That guides what you say to people. It guides how you listen. It guides how much you try, and sometimes it's necessary to help them with simple advice about their lives, but to always look for the moment and the opportunity to just be in that feeling with them and trust that no matter what's going on here with them, part of them knows, right? In the same way Jan already knew before she listened to Sid, or part of me already knew before I had that moment I described. If you are helping people, if that's what you want to do, you want to serve, if you put that at the top of your understanding that everybody has it, no matter what you think, right, then it'll make your mind quiet when you're with them, for one thing, because it removes the judgment. You're just present, and that's what's necessary to serve, is to be truly, truly present. Right? Jan and I have had that tested many times through our lives because we've been in some interesting situations, either in the corporate boardroom or in addiction centers or in the prisons when we worked in the prisons.
Our communities.
The communities, absolutely, And I'm not saying we never, or I never, I'll speak for myself, forgot that they had it within them, because I did every once in a while. But it's a way that we've seen life, so it comes back. And like the prisons as an example, I can't tell you I didn't have a moment of going, "Ooh, what's this person? Why are they here? What have they done?" But it melts away when you sit with people and you get quiet. It melts away the judgment. All that really matters is who's in front of you at that moment. By who, I mean the soul that's in front of you in that moment. Because it's soul-to-soul conversations that create real change, that open the door for real change. Right? So that idea of truly seeing that, which leads to another psychological understanding about this life. And that's the ability to see psychological innocence in everybody. Everybody is just caught up in whatever thinking they have and whatever they've been through in this life. And they think that's the world, and they're acting out of it. And it's innocent in that sense. It's an innocent lostness when people are lost. Right? But the other part is still there. The true self is still there. And that's, in a sense, you could say that that's who you address when you talk to people and you work with people. You address the true self. Right? As Sid would tell us in the early days, don't look at the mask. Talk to the soul behind the mask. And eventually that's who will talk back. That's who will be there. And that's been our experience, right? And it's really true that we have our ups and downs with it. We don't always see innocence, But when we do, when that moment comes, when you truly see psychological innocence of everybody in your life and everybody you encounter, it makes for a marvelous world. Just a marvelous, incredible, beautiful experience, right? And I'm not going to go into the whole story, but I grew up in a home full of violence and addiction, and that really did form my personality for a long time. The way I encountered life out of fear and insecurity, anger, resentment, all of those things, right? That's perfectly natural. We all, in that sense, until we have understanding, we are a product of our experience. That's the way life works, right? And then something comes along that shows you that those things that happened to you when you were younger were real when they were happening. Right? But what's happening now? What's happening now is that memory and thought are creating our feelings, not the actual present situation. Right? And as we begin to understand that, we begin to get free of whatever thoughts have controlled us or made our lives difficult. And so for me, I had a moment after knowing Sid for a while where I just had an insight. I really saw my father's psychological innocence. I saw that he was stuck in a world that was handed to him. He didn't know there was any world outside of that, right? And I just happened to be born in his house. Now, that realization, when we talk about quiet mind and having a quiet mind, realizations such as that are the biggest part of, a huge part of finding a quiet mind. In that case, if you think about my childhood, and I was the oldest of 11 kids, and when I was a teenager, a young teenager, feeling responsible for protecting or whatever, all those things I went through, if you think about that, all the volumes and volumes of thinking that created in me, and the ways of interacting with the world and insecurity, all of that, volumes. In the moment I saw my father's innocence, his psychological innocence, all those volumes fell away from me. It changed my entire way of being in the world. It shifted from being in the habits that came from that experience to seeing the innocence of it, seeing the innocence of my father, seeing my own innocence, and letting go of all of that. I remember I had this singular experience. We were in bed one night and Jan was asleep. And for some reason, I started thinking about my father, who I at that time hadn't spoken to in many, many years, maybe 10 or 11 years. And we've been having this new experience of life, this new understanding. And I was laying there, and for whatever reason, I started thinking about my father and things that happened. And I got really upset. I felt sick to my stomach, became very emotional. Jan's sleeping through all this. She doesn't know this is going on. And then I just had this moment of clarity. I saw that my father was living in a world handed to him. I saw his innocence. And I fell into this incredibly peaceful feeling. I've never experienced anything quite like it. And I slept. I remember I slept like 10 or 11 hours, a long time. And when I woke up, I didn't intellectually understand what I felt like, but I felt completely different. So much lighter, so much more at peace. And as time went on, I began to realize that, again, a single insight into the true reality of life, of who and what we are, who my father is, released volumes and volumes of thinking and ways of being for me, and allowed me the second chance to be present in this life without all of that. And interestingly enough, we felt like calling my dad after that, and we reestablished a relationship with him. He was really shocked that we would call and talk to him, but we just did it on a regular basis. And then I had the chance at some point to talk to him in a moment, and he changed. He became a totally different person. So seeing the psychological innocence of others and ourselves is really it's the key to freedom. It's the key to psychological freedom. It's the key to the freedom of a quiet mind. And it's the source of everybody's second chance.
And that quiet mind is so such a big part of what we've learned, and whatever you find that helps you get that peace of mind, like whether it's like we love to go for walks, or as I said, we start the morning listening to Sid, because that calms my mind, and waking up and starting the day fresh without before all the thoughts about work come in. And because I used to get up and go right to the office and check email, and just think I have to get ahead of the game. And one day when I caught on to that, I totally switched, and I started my day with the quiet and hearing my true self, and it changed everything in my life. This was just a few years ago, and I found my work got easier. I had more time. I was more relaxed with Chip, and just my world fell into place. I found balance in my life, and I know it just had to do with my mind had been so busy, and I wasn't even noticing it. And I thought the more busy I keep it, the more I'll be able to get done. And it was working against me. And so again, if whatever helps you get a quiet mind is so important, because when your mind is quiet, you don't hear what's out there. You hear from the true direction. You hear from inside, where life really is coming from, and where it's being fixed, and where it's being balanced, and everything is where the joy is. So and again, you don't have to try, you don't have to study the principles. You can't study the principles. When we first heard something, it wasn't from studying anything. It was, we stopped studying, we stopped searching, we stopped trying to fix ourselves, and we just started to see our own beauty. Period. And that's for everybody. No one in the world has better ability to hear the principles, or to hear what Sid had to say. It's in you, and the simpler it is, you can trust that that's the purest source of it. Is the simpler it is.
It's just, it really is almost too simple, really. That all we have to do is be kind to ourselves and be quiet and learn to listen and trust that there is wisdom within you. Like, we all have to start with believing that it exists within, right? Like, for us, even going back when we first heard Sid, the first thing, because of the feeling that came from him and the way that he spoke, we had a sense that there was a deeper world, right? Then when we got those glimpses of that deeper world, we began to believe there was a deeper world. Right? And yet we all start with believing, right, that it's possible, that that's possibly there. But then as we experience it more and more, we move from believing to knowing that it's there. And that's what I call true faith, okay? Not blind faith, true faith, from having that experience that deeper world exists.
It's hope.
It is.
What came to us in the beginning, wasn't it? It was hope.
Absolutely. That as hope enters our mind, it changes the direction of our thinking. It changes how we view things. Right? That's what hope is your true self coming through your thinking. Right? That there is something there. What do you think?
See if there's any questions out there.
Yeah, does anybody have any questions? And if you do, if you put your hand up, then I think people will bring you up and we'll hear you. And
Yes, you can use the raise hands button on the bottom if you want to speak live on stage, or if you prefer, or maybe because you are not so good at English to make a question, you can also post a question in the Q&A section, and we are going to translate it for you. Of course, if you are an English-speaking person, you are welcome to ask for the question live. Per gli italiani, sorry, I'm going to translate to Italian. Per gli italiani è il momento di domande e risposte, per cui se avete delle domande potete o farsele in italiano e noi le traduciamo, oppure porle direttamente. Okay, first question is Chiara Grandin. And I'm going to invite her on the stage. Oh, sorry.
Hi, Chiara.
Hi, Chip.
Okay.
Well, actually, I was just, there was a sentence you just said about true faith, not blind faith. Well, it's not a real question. It's just, when it's like a sunshine for me about faith, because it's not blind. It's based on experience, and I love it. Really, really reach it. Yeah, so thank you so much for this profound sharing with us. Really, thank you. It was amazing.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chiara. I'm going to invite on stage Karl from Germany.
Hi, Carl.
Karl, you are muted.
Carla?
Okay.
Oh, Carl, okay.
So we can see you, but we cannot hear you.
Able.
Yes. Now
There we go.
Chip and Jan, thank you so much. This was so touching, to listen to you. And it's true, I just close my eyes and I would try to listen without thinking and judging. And I think it's exactly what you said when you were listening to Sid, that kind of listening. And my question would be, what is it that sparkled your transformation? It was something that, could you really say something that by him speaking to you, by you listening to him, something that kind of woke up something in you? Because you said it was not so much the rationality of it, right? So it was something that, he addressed something that woke up in yourselves. Is it correct to say it like that?
Oh, I think that's absolutely correct.
Yes.
I mean, to give you some background, before we met Sid, we were searchers. We had searched through psychology, Buddhism. We had so many thoughts about, and we were so intent on the search. As a matter of fact, when I first few times I listened to Sid, he would be speaking and I'd be going, yeah, that's sort of like what Buddha said, and I think Christ said something like that. And I thought I knew that before, and I wasn't listening. Right? When the listening happened, like you were saying, you fell into a feeling, and I know it's a strange thing to say, but the words really didn't matter at that point. It's like speaking from there and seeing you in that way, you fell into that feeling, and once you fall into that feeling, you're connected to your wisdom, your true self, right? And you start to have your insights, and you see from that new world yourself. So you're absolutely right. It wasn't, in all the years we knew Sid, I don't remember him ever trying to convince us about anything one way or the other.
And what's beautiful is he would say to us that when you get that beautiful feeling, that's when you're really learning about life. And so it's not just when we were listening to Sid, he'd say, like in Second Chance, I don't know if you've read Sid's book, Second Chance. Well, there's a beautiful Hawaiian wise person that talks about that there's this spiritual like truth in the air. It's like in Hawaiian faith, they believe there's this, that you can just pick up that beautiful feeling in working in the garden or in nature. And so you start to notice those beautiful feelings, and you realize that's how you learn. It's not by studying and being serious. It's when you're in the beautiful feeling, because that's your true self is pure, beautiful feelings. And so that was like a gift to me, because before I didn't think I deserved to have beautiful feelings, and I wouldn't do things that gave me a beautiful feeling because I thought I had to be serious. So Sid just turned that all upside down and said, enjoy your life. That's how you learn. And that was what the best thing for us.
Yeah, you could look at it as a totally new way to learn. Like when I told you about the experience of seeing my son and my wife, really for the first time after being married for 6 or 7 years then. That seeing is the teaching, because you're getting a glimpse of a real world which is showing you the illusionary value of the world that you've been living in, the falseness of the world of your thinking. Right? That's the learning. And so, yeah, that's how Sid shared. And quite often, people imagine, those of us that knew him from the beginning, that we sat around for 40 years listening to Sid talk about the three principles and talk about consciousness and everything. And I can tell you that if it was 3 or 5% of the time, I think that would be a high estimate. Mostly it was just the way he lived and the feeling that you had to be in to hang out with him, to be honest. He lived in that feeling. He wasn't perfect. He had his ups and downs, rarely, but he did once in a while. But it was being in that feeling with him. And I can tell you, in the beginning, if I was in a lower state of mind, I couldn't stand to be around Sid Banks. It would really bother me,
Why is that?
It would just be disturbing. Like, I would think thoughts like, well, Sid's going to see that I'm insecure, that I'm not in a good state, all of those kind of things that we do. But even at a deeper level, it's like, I won't go into this too much, but the way I see it is our ego, our sense of self-importance, it reacts to truth. It sees truth as an existential threat. It's not, but that's how it reacts. Okay? And so sometimes in the early days when I'd get around that feeling with Sid, I know it was my ego. I just go, oh, I can't handle it, And that fell away over time. It didn't happen much later, but it's like he taught from the feeling, and the only way you can truly know your true self is to stand in your true self.
Right.
Yeah, you can't intellectually get there.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Carl. That was a
Thank
great
you.
question.
Really
Very, very good.
wonderful
Thank you.
question.
Thank you, Carl. So, any more question? Qualche altra domanda? Okay. No more raised hands.
I love all these beautiful comments.
Yes, the comments are beautiful.
I can't see all of them, but often people say, well, what if you're in a bad feeling? What are you learning? And I think what I'm learning when I'm not feeling too good and I'm feeling serious or upset is it's showing me that that's all it's showing me is I'm not really hearing my true self right now. And so it's not like we're saying that you have to be happy every minute to learn anything, but that's where you really are learning more about your true self, is in that nice feeling. And then it helps you to see when you're not enjoying life or there's challenging things happen around you. It helps to show you that you can handle things with a nice feeling, or you can have a negative feeling. There's no judgment. We're not saying you have to always be in a nice feeling, but now when I'm not feeling happy, I don't judge myself. I just see I'm not really hearing my true self right now, and it'll pass. So that has changed our life so much that gradually we're getting a nicer experience of life, just naturally. We're not trying to make it happen, but the more you listen, there's a guarantee your life will get nicer and more in harmony. That's part of it. And if it's not, then you must be listening to the wrong thing. like we did years ago. We kept thinking we're on such a beautiful spiritual path because we're going to these meditation retreats and we're eating, this strict diet, and so this is bringing us happiness. And we weren't seeing that. No, it was bringing us misery because we were fighting against our true self without realizing it.
So I'm going to.
We have another question, if you want to take it, from Anna.
Sure, please.
Okay.
Hi, Alma.
Anna.
Oh, Anna. Okay.
Hi.
Hi, Anna.
Nice to see you again.
For me too, and it was amazing to hear you. So really thank for that conversation with us. It's not a real question, but sorry, it's really dark behind me, but it's fine.
We can see you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you, because I was really, I had the feeling, okay, well, I thought I was at a level of simplicity, and then you open the floor, and then I fell down in a deeper level.
Lovely.
It was really amazing. I thought, okay, I came a very, very simple level. Here I am. Well done, Anna. And then you just open and then I fell down. It was really amazing to open my eyes to your words, to listen, as Carl said. So thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Thank you,
I'm
Anna. That was
happy for
lovely.
you.
Happy for you for sure.
Thank you.
It shows on your face too.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you can see that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Okay, so if you have anything else to say, or if you want just to greet people, and as you want.
I'd just like to thank you guys again for doing this, and for all these lovely people on this call. This is really,
Yes, these messages we're seeing are
yeah,
beautiful.
just lovely, absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
And I would just like to close, and I'm sure Jan will have something too. I'd like to close by sharing a spiritual fact. Okay? Here's a spiritual fact. Right now, in this moment, all of us here, all of us in this moment are home. All of us in this moment, we don't need anything. We don't need to fix anything. We don't need to be anything. We're home. And it's a pleasure to be with you when we're home.
Pleasure to be with you. You said something when you were talking about your dad today, and how you let go of all that thought about who he was and things he'd done. And I heard that for myself, just in a different way than I've ever heard it, just for myself. And that's so beautiful. We can never come to the end of learning, or learning who we are.
Yeah.
Becoming new every day to each other, just being new every day. Yeah. And not thinking life is bringing you this, just be open to what it's bringing you.
Okay, people are asking where they can listen to you again.
Well, on YouTube, if you look up Chip and Jan, there are many recordings from many places on there. That's a good place. If anybody has any questions they want to ask us after
our website,
website, vantageconsult.com, VANTAGE, consult, COCU. See, let's One more time, Vantage Consult, VANTAGEConsult.com.
Perfect.
And we actually have a YouTube channel.
We do have a
So
YouTube.
there's a few videos on there. So
And of course, at the school on the island.
Yes, yes. We're now, we have plans for another virtual school. We won't release the dates, but we will soon. And that's wonderful. And you know, when all this craziness passes, I would love to see you all come to Salt Spring and come to the school live. And we'd love to visit with you. So yeah.
and definitely sydneybanks.org.
Yes.
Sid's website is really a beautiful thing. He left that for everybody. So yeah.
So thank you very much, Chip and Jen. It was a great pleasure for us.
It was an honor.
An honor, yes, of course.
For us
The
to
honor was ours. Thank you very much. And lots of love to everybody.
where Alex and Kiara are, there's love.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
So thank you.
Have a great day and a cappuccino,
And a-
obviously.
Yes.
It's time for breakfast now.
Yes,
Of course,
for us it's time for bed.
bad now.
That's right. Well, lots of love to everybody and thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.